All right, we are officially live and ready to go with another amazing interview, this time with a little bit of a workshop taste, because this is going to be interactive, this is going to be hands-on. So whatever platform you're watching on, welcome. And if you're listening on the replay on the Chats with Gigi podcast, it is a pleasure to know that you are tuning in once again. Today, we're kicking off another Chats with Gigi interview and workshop, this time with a focus on how to strengthen your intuition. If this is your first time around here, welcome. I'm Gigi Diaz. I am the CEO of Seizing Happy, a coaching organization dedicated to nurturing the business and the woman behind the business equally. And we have these interviews and these conversations all the time because the idea is to be able to fill you with information, tools, and access to other professionals in the spaces of nurturing your business, as well as you, the woman behind the business, because it requires being able to balance and find equilibrium in both. It's not enough just to be a badass entrepreneur if your spirit, your mind, your health, your wealth are not aligned and doing all right, because your business is a reflection of you. So today, if you're watching live on YouTube, LinkedIn, or Facebook, know that you can drop your comments and we will share them on video on the screen. If you've got questions, you can drop them in as well, and we would be happy to have them answered toward the end. We will have a few minutes for Q&A with our special guest today. Nikki Novo is a Cuban-American best-selling author. She's a renowned intuitive, a spiritual teacher, and she guides inquisitive souls to find clarity and purpose in all areas of their life. She is a certified hypnotherapist and ThetaHealer. We'll talk about all these things a little bit more as we go through the interview. She's also a Reiki healer and has paved the way for thousands to be enlightened, awakened, and activated by her intuition school called Soul Academy. It's a heart-centered and a very encompassing school where you can dive in to kind of just dial into you. Also, she has a #1 best-selling book called The Final Swipe, which we'll talk a little bit more about through this interview as well. And as a certified soul teacher, she has a proprietary methodology called the Soul Reading Method. We're going to welcome Nikki onto the studio right now. I am so glad that you're here. Welcome. Thank you for being with us today.
Hi, Gigi. Thanks so much for having me. I love the mission behind your work, and I have so much to say about the spiritual lessons that we receive while we're in business. So I love the work you're doing. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thank you so much for that, because I actually discovered the need for looking at business and incorporating ourselves into our business holistically through severe burnout. And it wasn't until I realized that our business is a reflection of us, right? That our relationships are a reflection of us, that everything that we have going on is truly a reflection of what we have going on in here, and that this all needs to be well. And as I say this, I'm pointing to my body and my health and my head, my thoughts. It all needs to be well in order for everything around us to be well also. So I know that you have a really lengthy and profound story in regards to how you discovered your mission and your purpose. But one of the things that really attracted me to you is I have not met a lot of Cuban-American healers in this space. And so as I was born in Cuba, and I know that in Cuba, we have a very big Catholic and Yoruba backgrounds, which is an awkward, funky combination because of the history. And I wondered, how did you discover and choose this path for your spirituality coming from that background?
Yeah, that's such a great question. And thank you for asking it. So my parents are both Cuban. I was born in New Jersey because my parents left Cuba and went to New Jersey. That's where my grandparents worked in the factories there, and that was their first jobs. And we moved to Miami when I was 7, and they put me in Catholic school right away, which was different because in New Jersey I was in a public school system. And my mom was like, okay, well, all the Cuban kids, they go to Catholic schools here. We're Catholic. And they were my mom went to a nun school in Havana. So she was so excited to put me in this Catholic school. And I feel like it backfired on her, that she basically it gave me everything I needed though. Like I went to that school and I remember actually like very young. First of all, I was very like confused by Catholicism to begin with because I hadn't been so immersed the way that like, when you go to a Catholic school, like you're very immersed in it. And it was all Cuban kids. I mean, we had like maybe one kid in our class that wasn't Cuban. My sister-in-law, who my brothers both married American girls, and every time like they look at our yearbook, they're like, this doesn't make any sense. Like everybody was like Cuban. We were like, yes, like that's what Miami is, you know? So I was like very immersed in that culture. And in school, I remember one day this religion teacher telling me, very young, like in third grade, she was telling the class, she was like talking about when priests and nuns are called into service, that what happens is that they go to sleep and they have a dream. And when they're dreaming, an angel comes over their bed to tell them that they're meant to work for God. And I remember being in that class and looking around at people and being like, are you guys listening to this? Like, holy shit. Like I was super, like deeply like moved, not moved, maybe that's not the word, but scared, really. Like my mom said that for like a whole week I wouldn't sleep because I was convinced that that freaking angel was like going to come for me and tell me that I had to be a nun, because I always felt like I wasn't very connected to the religious aspect of my religion, but I felt very connected to God and I felt like very spiritual. So when I heard that story, I was like, oh, for sure, I'm gonna get chosen. Like I'm gonna get this lottery, and not, like I don't want to because I want to get married and I want to have money and I want to have kids. Like, and being a nun doesn't allow any of that, so I did not want to be called. But that was kind of like the first sign of, you know, this kind of calling to the work that I do now. So I always tell people that are like looking for their purposes and maybe looking for even like work that they're meant to do in the world. There's so many clues in life, you know, it's like we just have to take a moment to think about it. But that was like such a big clue. I forgot it obviously for many years, but as I started to do this work, I like started to had that memory of being afraid of being called into service, because in religion, like we were told that like if you're going to work for God, these are the two jobs, like a priest and a nun. Like in Catholicism, pretty much you can be a deacon, but like who are those guys? You know, like if you want to be legit, you know, if you're going to be legit, you're going to be a nun or a priest. So, you know, went to Catholic school my whole life, had a major like career crisis growing up because I come from a medical family. My father's a doctor. My brothers are doctors. They're married to doctors. And they, you know, my brothers always knew that they were going to study medicine, and I like didn't really fit into anything. My mom was a biology professor. So my college years were really about like finding my thing. I studied entertainment and public relations. I'm a Leo moon, so I have a lot of like Leo energy, and you know that sounded fun for me to like be in the spotlight. And it wasn't until kind of burning out in a way, like I went to the film, I was in the film industry in LA. I worked for two big movie studios, and then I became an editor for like a big like fashion publication. And I did that work for a long time. But at some point when you're doing that work, you know, it was like, okay, well, I can't push another $4,000 handbag. Like there has to be like something else I'm meant to do in this world. And like every good story, I was going through a really bad breakup. This guy broke up with me, and I was before being broken up with, I thought I was going to marry this person. You know, I was like very my intuition told me that this was the person, right? So I'm sure that has happened to some of you listening, that your intuition told you something, and then you feel super confused because it didn't work out that way. Has that happened to you, Gigi?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Where I'm like, this is the path, this is the person, or this is the thing. And then I'm like, that wasn't it.
Yeah, exactly. So very confused. So what happened was after that, you know, after that relationship, I was still an editor, and I dabbled in spirituality. I was just like always interested in it, but I was very much raised like, you don't do anything outside of Catholicism. Anything outside of Catholicism is Santeria. Santeria is bad. You know, that's basically like what I was taught. Like everything outside, crystals, Santeria, like tarot cards, Santeria, you know? And it's so funny because I have been to so many Santeros, and like their work is beautiful. So it's kind of a funny, but for a long time, I didn't go outside of that. got dumped by this guy. And, you know, when you get dumped, it's like, and you're having that little bit of a crisis, you're like, I can either drink, I can go see a therapist, or I can go see a psychic, you know? And I was like, well, I did a little bit of all three. The psychic was definitely like the most profound for me. So I had these two girlfriends who were like also Catholic, but a little bit more rebel. And they had already seen, you know, they've already gone outside of that. They had already seen the Santera, like psychics and all this stuff. So we were on a hunt in Miami to like find the best psychic. And we went to a few. And I remember the first one I went to, my girlfriend, who was like a new girlfriend, introduced, and she was Catholic Cuban also. And she brings me, she's like, this lady's great. You're going to love her. And I'm like, okay, great. So we drive to like some obscure place in like South Florida where we were no longer in Miami. It was super dark. And like, you know, you can't go through the front door. You're like going through like some side gate. I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm either going to like get a reading or get murdered today. I'm like, not sure like what my future holds, literally. So we get the reading with this lady, and I had just, you know, was going through that breakup. And what she tells me is, she's like, you're never going to be happy. You are only going to be happy if you end up with that guy. And for $750, I can sell you a despojo, and like, you'll get your boyfriend back or whatever. And I was like crying. I was like, oh my gosh. She told me I'm never going to be happy before. I don't have $750 to get like the, you know, spirit removal or whatever. So that was like my first experience. I was like, I should have listened to my mom. Like, she was right. Like, all of this is bad. My girlfriend felt like really bad because she was like, no, but there's like some good experiences. So she didn't give up. Like, even though I had that bad experience, she's like, no, Nikki. Like, so thankfully, in a way, like it's so interesting when your path is like calling you, you know, and there are these moments that you're like, oh my gosh, get me off this path. Like, get me, you know, this is, you know, awful. Just kidding. I don't want to see a psychic. But my girlfriend was very insistent. She's like, no. Like, we just got to find a good one for you. Like, you're going to like it. So we went on a little bit of a hunt. One day we're at Lincoln Road, myself, that friend, and another girlfriend. We're talking about like, oh my gosh, like we haven't been able to find a good psychic. We go back to, we leave our dinner. We go back to the car, which was parked in a parking garage, a big parking garage. No joke, Gigi. I get to the front door of the car, like I'm pulling the passenger handle, and on the door, on the window, is a little card that says angel readings, blah, 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 right? Like, we were literally talking about it at dinner. And there was no way that even if somebody would have heard us talk, would have known where our car was, because it was a huge parking garage.
Right.
It was just like the angels literally talking to us. And we had that card. And that card, we ended up going to get a reading with this woman, Tari, and she changed my life. And I met her, did a reading with her. She was super spot on. I know you guys are going to want her phone number. Happy to give it to you. She was like very spot on. She predicted my husband like years before I met him, like all these things. She was fantastic. And at the end of the reading, this weird thing happened, Gigi, that I asked her at the end of the reading. I was so, you know, profoundly moved by like the information she had given me and by her gift. Really, like I was very impressed by her gift. And I asked her at the end of the reading, I go, do you think I can do this? Like, can I do this? Which is such a weird question, because typically, like when you meet a psychic or you hear of a medium, we all assume that they have a special gift, that there's some sort of like superhero, and they were born that way. You know, they've been seeing ghosts since they were 2, that kind of thing. And I don't know why the words came out of my mouth, but I had like the audacity to ask this lady who, you know, had been probably practicing for a long time, if I could do what she does. Like, I was wondering if like I could be psychic like her. And she was so kind to be like, yes, like she believed that I could be trained, and that like she believed, I don't know if she believed in me or she just believed that anybody could do it, but she did like open up that world to me. And she opened up this world to like books on, you know, how to connect with angels and, you know, all this stuff. And I was okay with angels because they were in the Bible. So I was like, oh, this is safe, you know? So I actually studied angels first, and then I moved into like everything else. But it really was like a rabbit hole. And it was truly like spirit introducing these people and these opportunities. I was an editor at the time, and that job gave me like the opportunity to talk to a lot of people that I probably wouldn't regularly talk to. And I purposely like sought out stories that were a little bit more like woo-woo. So I met a lot of cool, you know, I met like the ThetaHealer and all that kind of stuff. And I just thought I was interested. I was really at the beginning looking to heal myself. And I was also looking to get the answer. Why was my intuition wrong? Like, why was it that I thought that, that boyfriend was supposed to be my husband and then I was wrong? So I was really also curious about this gut feeling that I had been following my whole life. Like, why does it work sometimes? And why does it not work other times? Like, why did this lady in the reading, like, why was she so good at being able to be intuitive? And why wasn't I? So, like, why was I getting it wrong? So my first kind of into intuition was really, I was like a perfectionist, and I was like, oh my gosh, maybe I could learn to like never make a mistake again. Maybe there is like a way to get so good at my intuition and like so good at knowing myself that I won't ever have to make a wrong turn. So let's be honest, the first reason I got into it was less than spiritual, was because I was like really looking to not get hurt again. I didn't want to like go through the pain that I had gone through. So I started to study, and truly, like, what I learned was that I went from 0 ultimately to 100, and that I really started to learn that like anybody can be intuitive, that we all have the connection or the ability to connect to our soul, because really intuition is truly like the language of your spirit. So we are mind, body, and spirit, and using your heart to connect to that higher self, to that like very ancient wisdom within us, is intuition. It's almost like it's like the telephone to the spirit. So, and I think that, and to answer that question that I had been asking, like, why was my intuition wrong? It was, hey Q, was because intuition is not actually about being right. It's not about being predictive. It is the connection to the spirit. So intuition often will show us like 5 steps, but not show us all 10 steps. And it's just like, I need you to date this guy. I need you to go through this like horrible thing that's actually going to lead you to the psychic, who's going to lead you to, and was it wrong to date that guy? And what if I would have dated the guy and not thought I was going to marry him? I wouldn't have been so like distraught, and I would not have gone down this like path of like hitting a rock bottom and seeking help outside the norm. It's like, it's in those moments of crisis that we go outside of the norm. Actually, to find my boyfriend, I remember going to church with my mom and like praying and being like, please God, like, I'm ready for a boyfriend. And then like the boyfriend came. So that did not work, so like after breaking up with him, I was like, God, like, you really ripped me off. Like, I'm gonna have to go outside. Like, I want my money back. So I had to go outside of that. And if I didn't have that experience, I wouldn't have gone outside. So, that was, I hope that answered your question a little bit. And then, I just got really good at it. I loved the readings. People started coming to me because I was doing like, I've always been a writer. So I was like writing like self-help, and people started to come to me for advice. And then when they would come to me for advice, by accident, I would like give them intuitive advice. I didn't mean to. I didn't want anybody to know that I was doing that, because like I was an editor during the day and like a psychic in my bedroom alone. I was also at the time, I had just met my husband, and like he was in love with a fashion editor, not a witch. So I had to like hide that. Yeah, I totally did a bait and switch on the guy. Like 2 years into our marriage, I was like, by the way, quitting that job and opening up like a readings company. So, and he's like a strange person himself. So he was like down for the change, but I had to be in the closet for a really long time. I also didn't really like know what I was doing, but what was happening is that people were coming to me. They were like seeking me out. And then once I started to give this advice, or like this life coaching advice that I thought I was giving, it was so obvious that it was intuitive. So, and then I had like weird experiences. I was like meeting spirit guides, and dead people were coming to talk to me. It was like, it's just the minute you open, as you start to access the third eye and like you start to open it, it's just, for some people it's very fast, but it is very much a switch where like it just kind of starts happening. And then intuition is truly a practice and a muscle. So the more I did readings, the better I got at it. And now my brain is so, because it's a part of the brain that we have to use to like really connect and focus. So it is meditation, and your brain gets stronger as you like learn to hold the focus. So the more you practice it, the better you get. And here I am. And my mom still doesn't approve of what I do. So
I was actually going to ask you. And so how does your mom now align with what you do? And you answered my question. She's like, she ain't having it. I loved a few of the things that you said, and I want to dive into them. But first, you mentioned right now in this story, you mentioned that you were a writer by day, right? And then an intuitive by night, alone in your room. And you were talking to these people and you were giving them intuitive advice, but you said, I didn't want others to know. I feel like with our spirituality and our spiritual growth, this happens often. But I feel like it happens in other spaces in our life too, such as in business, where it's like, well, I really want to launch this business, but I don't really want to tell anybody because I don't really know what everyone's going to say and what are they going to think. And so I find that, I'd love to ask you, what part of you do you feel is the part that was like, I don't really want anybody to know that I have these like magic witchy powers, right? Like you just called yourself, you're like, oh, and I'm also a witch. It's funny because I tell my husband the same thing. And sometimes at first he was raised like Christian also. And at first he was like, you're doing what now? And because the moment he walked into my apartment the first time, I have crystals and charged like meditated into these crystals in every corner of my house. I have my house feng shui, like I have all these things. And when we first started hanging out, he'd come in and like he went to touch something, and I'm like, you can't touch my crystals yet. And he's like, what is this? These are rocks. What's the big deal if I touch them? I'm like, first of all. So from then to now, 4 years later, I have him visualizing, and he's like, I understand manifestation now, and I kind of get it. I've seen there to be proof that this is what it is. And every once in a while, I'll tell him, I'm like, babe, I'm going to be doing witchy shit, and I need you to not bother me for like an hour. And he'll just look at me and be like, okay. And he gets it. And I find the term to be, I think that taking away the negative connotation of the witchy word, like I'm a witch and I do witchy shit, is totally good. Some people disagree, but I think it's great. But I'm curious to go back to the question. What is that space of us that feels like I don't want others to know this magic in me, whether it's the spirituality that you're uncovering or discovering, or it is the new business that you want to launch or the new book that you want to write? What is that makes us want to stay quiet? And then the second part of the question is, how did you overcome it? And what suggestions do you have to say, I am witchy as fuck and I do this all the time, or I am launching this business and I am quitting my 9 to 5. And, how would you say is the best way to get there?
Yeah, that's such a good question. And I've definitely asked myself the same thing, because it was very torturous when I was moving, because I did like small increments. I like left magazine writing. I went into self-help blogging or like life coaching. And from like life coaching, I made a big jump into like spiritual, but even the metaphysics, which is like spirit guides and psychic, gifts and things like that. So it was like even past spirituality, because it was almost, witchy, metaphysic, all that stuff. And I've asked, and it was very torturous because I did like 2 years basically of like being in the closet. And I think there's a lot of things here. First, which my younger brother pointed out to me, I did this podcast interview on my podcast where I interviewed my 2 brothers. And I asked them in the interview, I was like, hey, like, what was it like when I started to come out of the spiritual closet? Like, what was it like for you? Because we're very close in age. We have similar friends. We come from like, that tight Miami, like Cuban community, whatever. And I always thought like, is it embarrassing them? Are they embarrassed of their sister? They're, they're doctors, and like, does it look weird that like, the sister's doing this thing? And they both, it was like the most uninventive, like, I feel like it was like the worst podcast ever, because they had like nothing to say. They were like, no, it wasn't that big of a deal. Like, you do you, So it was like really funny that I was, and I think for anything, like we're always concerned, like, what are they going to think when I do that business or whatever? And it's truly, we think about ourselves more than anybody's really thinking about us. Like even my 2 brothers, like they were not, first of all, surprised by what I was doing. Like in many ways, they felt like I was always a little eccentric anyways. So it wasn't something super out of the norm. Actually, that boyfriend that I talk about, we caught up a few years ago, and I was like, oh my gosh, isn't it so weird? Like what I'm doing? Like, can you believe what I'm doing? And he's like, Nikki, you've always been weird. Like that's like, he's like, that's what like is so attractive about you. You know, he's like, you've always been weird. And I'm like, what? I thought I was doing, like, look at my hair and my jewelry. Like I thought I was doing such a good job of looking normal, you know? So I think that like, that's number one. People are not like, two things there. Like number one, people are not thinking of you as much as you think they are. So we always have to remember that. Number two, even when you move into this next thing, most people close to you and that like know you well are not going to be like super surprised by the move, because you'd be surprised like energetically how people feel each other. And they're like, oh yeah, that's like, it's weird, but at the same time, I'm not surprised. So I thought that that was very interesting. And unlike you, Gigi, like there were no signs in my house. All the books I was reading about spirituality, I had in a like a big Tupperware underneath my bed. And I would always tell my roommate, I'm like, Liz, if I die in a car accident, something happens to me, you don't even mourn a tear, okay? You're going to go straight to my room. You're going to go under my bed. You're going to get all those books and you're going to burn them. Like that was like the way that I lived. So there weren't physical signs, right? And, you know, and I was an editor, like a fashion editor. So there were no physical signs. But like even the people that loved me the most weren't like super surprised. So I kind of want to say that. Now, going into spiritual, like kind of making a spiritual leap and kind of showing that part of ourselves as women is hard for a few reasons as well. One is there's a lot of past life stuff there. Like many of us have been witches or been working in circle for many lifetimes, and we've been like murdered for doing that. So believe it or not, a lot of like our past life trauma can come into this lifetime. So even though me coming out of the closet like wasn't a big deal in like the big scheme of things, like nobody was going to come murder me or like leave me, or, you know, that fear of abandonment, like even though it felt very real for me, we live in a world that thankfully, you know, we're not in Cuba and we can, for the most part, say what we need to say and, you know, and like be who we want to be at this time in the world, like most of the time. So there really is no fear of that, but in our body, it feels that way. Other reasons can also, like as a woman, and this is like beyond spirit, like kind of coming out of the spiritual closet, women, our throat chakra, which is in the throat, which is like expression of self, you know, true expression, all that kind of stuff, has been very like compromised for many generations. So like even like you coming out and being like, oh, this is the business I want to be, or this is who I truly am, it's very painful for you, but it's also a pain you're carrying from your lineage. So like your grandmother, maybe she didn't want to be a stay-at-home mom and she actually really wanted to be the local attorney, but she couldn't, and she couldn't express that. So when we try to express our truth, we're actually like carrying the unspoken expression of the lineage. So that's why it feels both very important to do, but also very hard to do. So we deal with that. And just in general, like even if your lineage wasn't so controlled, if you are a female, you know, genetics, you are going to have, because that is something like very specific to the female species that unfortunately, like we have not been allowed to express ourselves truly. So we're always going to be like afraid of that. And then the last thing I wanted to say was that sometimes we want to hold on to these ideas, books and businesses and, you know, whatever, because we're protecting them. So I think in many ways, I knew I was going to get opinions, and I did not need opinions at that time. I needed to just like work in a cave, like put my head down and do the readings. And I needed to like block. I mean, I wouldn't even talk to my husband about it because at this time we were already married. I needed my mom to believe I was like still an editor. Like I needed to really, all that was the only people I would share with were obviously like the clients and things like that. But I needed to like not discuss it with my brothers, even though I knew at the end of the day they were going to accept me. I just needed that time to really like go into the work without anybody's opinion so that it could be as pure as possible. Because if I like shared that idea when it was still an infant, you know, like I didn't know what it was. I didn't know what I was doing. I didn't know where I was going. If I would have shared it and asked for too many opinions, it wouldn't have been truly mine. It would have been like a baby that was like 25% mine and then 75% expectations and opinions and all that kind of things. And I would have been, you know, birthed something that was like not true to my true expression. So I protected it for a while because I couldn't, all the questions I was going to get from my close family and friends, I would not have been able to answer. So I kept it that way on purpose.
I love that. I love that because I feel like there are also other times in our life when we do want to bounce things around with our loved ones, when we do want to have other people ask us questions and serve as our mirrors and get other people's opinions. And hey, I'm thinking about this and maybe I'm doing that. What do you think? So I wonder, how do you know, or what's the best way, would you say, to connect with ourselves and know when is the time to just nurture the idea, sit with it and let it be born from us? And when is the time to say, I've got this idea, here are my questions and thoughts, or how can you support me? Where is that threshold, would you say, when to ask and when not to ask, when to share and when not to share?
And that's a great question, because actually like that is the development of intuition at the end of the day. Like I think that if you are in a state that you have noticed that you can't really make a decision for yourself, like you haven't been able to unless you know, pull your 5 best friends or whatever before you make a move. Like you need to know that if you're really dedicated to hearing yourself, which as a business owner you should be, because it's just you and that's it, no matter who's working with you, that developing intuition is the most, to me, one of the most important things you can do, which at the end of the day is the development of like my connection to my spirit, my connection to myself, all that stuff. So if you're finding that you are somebody that's like, you're already in a place where you're always getting opinions, then it might be like a nice little science project to do like 3 months or whatever whatever you can handle, maybe 1 month, maybe it's just 1 week of not getting opinions and going through life and making your own decisions. For me, after college, I went to college in Miami, staying at my parents' house like a good Cuban kid, and then ultimately moved to LA. And I remember being like, wait, like I can order whatever I want on this menu. Like I'm not concerned about like what my friends are ordering, or like, I remember learning my sense of style while I was there. And a lot of us that grew up with like beautiful tight families or tight groups, sometimes we don't have the space to really like discover who we are. So if you feel like you're there and that you're kind of only making choices in group, then it would be a nice project to see, like a little experiment to see what it looks like to dedicate yourself to like a week, a month, 3 months, to no decisions, to no opinions, making decisions only by yourself. And then I remember going into that for like a cave, and then I remember having to come out and be like, okay, it is time. Like even like I am open to listening to my husband now, but I wasn't open when I first started, because I didn't know what it was. So like once I understand and like know what this baby is, it's very helpful to get like feedback from my husband and things like that. And I think that feedback and no feedback are seasons. Even in my business, I've seen that, like, usually I work like this: create the thing. Don't ask anybody for what the hell they think. Just create the thing. Like create what's within you. Like I create like that. So if it's a program, it's a book, like just create the thing. Don't worry about like create what's within you, because to me, creation is, it is the soul trying to come through in human form. It's like, oh, I'm downloading this gift that only I carry, and I'm here to offer it into the world. So it has to come like from me. Like I am really believing that I am the vessel of creation and being okay with that. It's when I'm pregnant and giving birth, like I'm not asking people to come and give me opinions of like, how to make this happen. It's like, no, I kind of get how you get it. I do it with my husband and like whatever. So same thing, like I create the thing. That's the first thing with no whatever. Once it's out, that's when I'm like, okay, and I'm not feeling insecure. because that's the trick. Like, I'm strong enough to receive the feedback. I understand that the feedback is not personal. Like, it's not about me, whether I'm good or bad or whatever. It's because I'm dedicated to making the best product I can. So that's when I feel like collaboration is very great, because like, if you are truly dedicated to like making a good product, then you have to be open to putting it out into the world and receiving the feedback. Like, you become faster, better, stronger by that feedback. But if you're asking it before you've actually birthed it, you're never going to birth the thing. So I believe in like birthing the thing, then getting the feedback, which a lot of us don't like because we're lazy, and it's like, oh, if you tell me that this chapter that I just wrote is like not completely right, I'm gonna have to fucking write it again. And it's like, we just want to get it out, you know what I mean? So a lot of times, like, we're scared of the opinion, but we don't have like sometimes like we can't ground long enough into the product, the business or whatever, to make it really, really good. And that's why we don't really like want the opinions, so you have to have the patience to like receive that and make the best product you can. If not, you're just going to be creating a bunch of things, but they don't ever really grow into a tree. They only stay as like little plants, because you never fed it enough to like become a full tree. And feeding it is through like what's working, what's not working, tweaking it, all that kind of stuff.
That's so good. Oh, that's so good, because it also taps a little bit into having that trust in yourself too.
Yeah.
That knowing that you can birth it, and honoring the process of figuring it out with your own intuitive connection, with your own awareness, with your own, like you said, like your own telephone dial in to the universe or to God, and just kind of trust that. So how do we build that trust? I know that in a lot of the people that are watching right now that have been connected with Seizing Happy, and what we do in Seizing Happy when we go woo woo, which is to talk about intuition and to talk about your own drive and to talk about your connection, your manifestation, your energy, all these things. If you're already of the understanding that those things exist, that you have a power over them, and that they are your tools, right? Your unique, beautiful, powerful tools to create the life of your dreams, then you're here just to enhance that, right? But for the people that are just now starting to awaken in their spirituality, what would you say are some tips to be able to connect with our intuition, to grow that trust, to strengthen our intuition, and be able to take that 1 week, 3 months, whatever it is for them, to just nurture the space and nurture the idea and trust ourselves in that process before we birth whatever it is, the business, the intuitive connection, whatever it is?
Yeah, I love that question. And there's a lot of different levels, right? Like, I mean, you can learn intuition by connecting to spirit guides. I mean, there's like, you can go really woo-woo, really metaphysical if you want to, or you can do it at like the very, first level, or not, I don't want to say basic because it's not even first level, but we all have to remember that we are mind, body, and soul. And that like truly living on earth is a spiritual experience. We're really like these spiritual beings having this like, oh, cool, like I'm in a video game, and I'm trying to understand myself and like learn lessons as a soul and all that kind of stuff. I think without that awareness, or I truly see it as a remembering, because what's interesting about being human is that we come to this lifetime and we forget everything. Like, if we truly have had reincarnations, and if we've truly, create purposes for ourselves and stuff like that, the concept is that before I come to this life, I've designed my soul's contract, or I've designed my soul's purpose for this lifetime. And I come to, the trick about Earth is that you forget everything. You don't remember that you don't remember you're one with God. Like we look and we're like, oh, everybody's separate, because it's like you're playing a video game, but you really think the video game is real. Like, you forgot that there's somebody on the other end, like, with the little, or whatever, in my son's case, the VR thing that he does now, he moves around. It's not even a this anymore. It's a this. And so I truly believe that to be the most like efficient this lifetime, from a soul's perspective, is like you have to activate your remembering. we have to remember, like we were talking about past lives and all that stuff. Those are all rememberings. Even when you ask yourself, like, what am I supposed to, like, what do I do with myself this lifetime? You're actually not having a crisis. You're having an awareness outside that amnesia. You're actually like remembering, like, oh shoot, like I think I signed up for something this lifetime. So we as humans think it's like, oh my gosh, I'm having a crisis. I hate my job. I hate my life. But it's actually like, no, for the first time this lifetime, you are remembering that you signed up for something, that there actually was like a plan for you. And the trick is to connect to that spirit part of yourself, which is why spirituality is a thing and why it's important, because we remember. And I mean, if you're Catholic or you're Christian, it's the Trinity, right? Like mind, body, spirit, like God, Father, God, Jesus, Holy Spirit, right? Mind, body, soul. So, I mean, this is not new, but we sometimes as humans, we only think about the brain and the body, which is great because I studied hypnotherapy first. Like I got really into the brain, and then I got like super interested in the body, how the body holds emotions. And it was actually through that portal that then I was like, spirit came to me after I did like cool, money, the mindset stuff and the body stuff. And then I was like, oh, there's this third portal, and that connection is like really, what we seek. So in order to do it, like as first, just remembering, like if you can, and maybe as I say this doesn't resonate with you, but if you can just for a moment ask yourself, like, am I spirit? Like, am I soul? Like, what are my thoughts around that? Like, am I one with God? Like if you can just like ask those bigger questions just for a second, that's going to help activate the remembering. And then from there has to be like somewhat of a practice. There has to be quiet time. Like our lives are so busy. Like we have no time to hear ourselves. So there has to be like a little bit, every morning for the most part. I live on 30 acres of land. So, I'm very blessed to have like the space that I live in, but I'll go for a hike by myself, and I have 3 kids and it gets complicated and all those things, but my morning ritual is very important. So either if it's like working out or, stretching, but there's some sort of allocated time to myself so that I can hear myself, not to ask myself questions or anything, but that just to like be present. And in that, in that presence, I can start to like remember and like hear things and get clear. I think that's also why we ask the word like, oh, I just want clarity on something. It's like, really, we just like want a moment with ourselves, with our spirit. So making sure that you have some allocated time that maybe you can't do it every day, but you can dedicate, maybe you can do it on the weekends or something, and that you are doing it like you're just dealing with the uncomfortable silence, because I know that it gets uncomfortable when we're like alone and, all that stuff. So definitely that. And also if like in an kind of a fun, game type of way, you'd be surprised like what you're capable of. Like you can be like, okay, I'm going to get a notebook and I have all these questions for God. Like if I can connect with God, I want to do it right now, whatever. You can get a notebook and you can just ask your questions to God, right? Like you're writing a letter to Santa Claus, and just take a minute to like really kind of just focus on your heart, a lot of gratitude. I always say a bit of a prayer before I connect, because when you're trying to connect, even in the readings, I'm trying to move past my human self. Like I'm trying to connect to my spirit. So I have to almost like pray for that like UFO machine to turn on. Like I have to say like, thank you so much for this, opportunity. Like, thank you for, connecting with me. Like, please help me to be a vessel for Gigi so I can like receive the right information or whatever. So I get myself in the right place, like in a good connected place. And then you can do what we call like channel writing. Like you can ask questions, put your pen on the paper, and don't overthink it, and just be like, I think this is what I'm getting. And just see, you'd be surprised, because God and spirit is within you. So we're so, you asked this question about like, why are we afraid to, share our power or whatever. And it's like, because we're like afraid of our own power, like, and because the world has told us that like we're not that powerful, but we are all creators. We are super powerful, and we're all little parts of spirit. So we can do all the same stuff. You know, like I don't have a superpower because I'm psychic. I just like believed that maybe I can develop that. You know, like I believed in like my godliness almost in a way, my divinity. And I was like, well, if this is like a divine characteristic, and if I am divine, perhaps I can develop that. So we are like scared of that power, you know, that we have within us. But you'll see that you can just like play and you'll get it. Definitely intuition is the energy of curiosity and playfulness. So that's why I always say like play or get a notebook and play, because the energy of intuition is not the energy of like desperate. Usually we pull like a deck of cards, let's say, because we're anxious and we're desperate and like we need to know right now. Or if you go to a psychic, it's like, I need to know right now. And the reason you're not getting the clarity and you're not getting the answer is because energetically you're not a match for divine information within yourself. Energetically, to be a match of divine information, it has to be light, it has to be playful, and you have to be curious, because intuition is basically downloads without the mind's logic getting in the way to be judgmental and like reworking the message. So I have to be in a state of like, Gigi, you know, sits there and says like, am I supposed to do this business? And if I'm like, oh my gosh, how could she be asking me that question? Like, I think she's like not a good businesswoman. Like, of course not, blah, 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 like judgment, you know, all these things. Really the technique would be, that's so interesting. Okay, cool. Let me see. So fascinating. You know what I'm really like feeling like I want to say to you? I feel like I want to tell you to like go to the right, like, because when you go to the right, blah, 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 and you are truly like in a curious place, that's an energetic match to divine information. If you're in a judgmental place, if you're in a scared place or in an anxious place, that's such a good opportunity for fear or the devil to come in. So I get that question all the time, difference between intuition and fear. And it's like, well, tell me what energy you're in when you're connecting, and then you'll know. So energetically, to be a match for divine information, because it's a connection, it's an energetic connection that you're making, you have to get into the right space. So that's why gratitude, open heart, thank you so much, this is so fun, I'm so excited, let's see what I get. That's how you're going to get the best information.
I absolutely love that, because I feel like that's also true for almost any space in life. The outcome of what you're going to get is fully depending on what space you're in when you're approaching that, right? Like if you're looking for love and you're dating, and your situation or the space that you're in as you approach dating is like, oh, dating sucks and everybody out there is a liar and everybody's a cheater and everybody's like, that's the space you're in, that's how you're going to approach dating, that's what you're going to get back, right? So if you're in a space of curiosity and playfulness, I think it's fascinating that you say like that's where the real connection comes in with spirit, is when you're open to see what comes up, right? Like, let me just see what I get here. Another thing that I want to ask you, you mentioned you can open up, you can make that connection and then see what comes in, right? But if you're working from a space of fear, that's where, you know, these doubts, or you mentioned the devil could come in and creep into your thoughts. What would you say, especially for a beginner, but also for somebody who's really advanced in the spaces of energy and connection? What are some ways that we can protect our energy when we are connecting, to ensure not just that our own logical mind is not getting in the way of what we're receiving, but also that there aren't any other things that are getting in the way or that can kind of come into our space and our energy? What would you say are some ways that we can protect our energy like that?
Gigi's like asking for a friend, but it's really Bruja Gigi that needs this answer.
Oh yeah, it's me. Girl, listen, I'm gonna tell you right now, before you answer, I use my 20 years of experience in media 100% selfishly, because I'm like, I have access to these people that can answer these fascinating questions that I would have to read 10 books to get an answer on. So I'm like, somebody finds me, Nikki. I literally manifested you. Like, I discovered, before you answer that question, hold on, we're gonna get right back to how to protect your energetic space. but I heard you speak in Sahara Rose's podcast, the Higher Self podcast, and I listen to her all the time. And I was like all the way in there, and I'm like snapping for you when you're talking, and then you're like, yeah, because my family is Cuban, and I'm like, what did she just say? Here's it, because I agree with you. I was also raised to where if it's not Catholicism, it's Santeria, right? And then that's just what it is. And so I was like, there's a Cuban out here talking about energy and Reiki, and what? I need her. And so when I relaunched the podcast, and I have the Seizing Happy community and all these things, I'm like, I need Nikki. I'm like, I need Nikki in this space, and I need her, and I need her yesterday. And I literally said that out loud. I'm like, I need someone to directly introduce me to Nikki. And within days, I kid you not, within days, I randomly had a friend of mine, she's a soul sister of mine who's actually connected to this right now. Her name is Quadira Tears, and she's watching live. And she was like, do you happen to know Nikki Novo? I'm like, get the fuck out of here. I don't, but I'm about to. Like, wherever that question just came from, yes to whatever you're going to say next. Tell me what I need to do. And she made this wonderful introduction with you and your team. And I was like, perfect. So we made this happen. But I ask these questions. I know that these questions serve other people who are curious about intuition, but 100% that question's for me, homegirl. 100%.
I love that story. And if you're okay with Gigi, I wanted to like just share something for anybody who's listening that's maybe like a coach or starting their own business, like, well, any business needs clients, right? And I know we're taught all these sales things and, you know, how to, you know, make content this way and attract your people and blah, blah, blah. But if you have that spiritual knowing and you're really kind of like grounded in like, I know why God sent me here. Like, I know that's why as a 7-year-old, I knew that like there was a job for me in like this army of like spirituality. I just didn't know what it was. But if you're grounded in that, like, you know, I do this work because, and it doesn't have to be like this, that I do like spiritual work. It could be like, you know, I have a flower shop and I just want to make these beautiful arrangements, and it brings a lot of happiness to people. And that's my offering to the world. I really do believe that like when you have that spiritual knowing and you know that you are like supported, like literally like you have the, you know, your biggest testimonial is like of spirit, then there is like, it's so much easier to run your business also because people find me, you know, like the story that you're saying, Gigi, like I'm not like working super hard, you know, like Sahara, what, you know, of course I'm showing up every day and I work hard in the sense that I show up every day and I say these crazy, you know, I let myself like say whatever's on my mind and all these kind of things. But I do feel like we have lived many lifetimes. I love Quadira. Like, I'm sure that we have lived a lifetime together and that she is connected to you. And a lot of people bring me like my people because I feel we've been doing this for many lifetimes. I feel as light workers, we have a mission together and we all help each other out in many ways. And this is like a very deep, I have goosebumps. It's a deep remembering. So, you know, intuition, all that stuff, it's fun, but also it helps you do your business better because you can ground in like the higher picture, because we get stuck in the very small details. Why do I only have 10 followers? Like, why am I not making enough money? Like all that kind of stuff. And it's like, no, like getting down to that truly, like I was sent here to do this work. And if I ground into that a little bit more, I can trust a lot more. So, you know, when you get to kind of a mastery of intuition, what you get to is the energy of trust. You have to start off with curiosity and fun, but ultimately you get to a place of trust. And I'm very grateful that I get to live my life in a lot of trust because I've yet to like be shown otherwise. So these stories of like kind of how we met and all those things, I think that can be everybody's story in business as they ground into like, I know this sounds like a crazy idea, but this is the business I'm really called to do. And I know that it's not going to be easy, especially maybe the first few months or years or whatever, but like, this is why I was put here and I will be supported as long as I stay connected to spirit and I follow that. I'm going to be okay. I'm going to be better than okay. I'm going to change the world. So it's my little talk.
I love that.
Yeah, and I feel like some of you listen, like, need to remember that, like, need to, not that, oh, start with why bullshit, and not even like, why am I doing this? But like, no, like, spiritually, why the hell did you come to this lifetime? And you'd be surprised that a lot of it has to do with like what you're doing in the world. So much bigger reason for you to do that. And it's a much bigger way to ground into that. As for protection, great question. A lot of people get afraid of accessing their intuition, especially if you had like a mother telling you that, you know, something bad is going to happen to you. You usually don't want to, you know, open your third eye or get into your intuition. If you have a witch wound from a past life, you're going to be afraid also. So sometimes even when I'm teaching people intuition in Soul Academy, people are scared to get into it, right? So the reason why is because you're afraid of what's going to happen. So definitely protection is a really good question, because actually if you feel safe, you'll be able to do it better. So there's different ways for protection. I mean, you can do like the crystals like you do, and you can kind of, my office is set around like 7 giant trees that are creating like a protection circle for me. So even the way you set up your space can be helpful if you're going to get into the practice of like meditating and trying to connect. If you can go to the same place every time, it's helpful because you kind of like set the energy there. So like my office space or even my home is like set with a certain energy that I tend to, which is just basically, you know, we purposely put the building between these trees. You know, I do a lot of like energetic bubbling, kind of just like imagining my home being protected. You do a lot of cleansing. So we kind of think about protection a lot, but you want to think about cleansing off also. So you want to cleanse your energy. That could be a salt bath or even just a regular bath, and just be like, I want to release everything that I carried today. You can do a simple like closing your eyes and seeing white light go through your body, and you're like, I'm energetically cleansing myself. Dancing is a really good way to energetically cleanse yourself. So as you cleanse yourself, then also that makes things easier. But your space is the first thing. Like, where am I connecting? You know, and what does the space feel like? Sometimes when we first get into this work, we realize like, oh man, like I gotta clean out this house. You know, like I'm sure you guys have all felt that you're just like, you've gone to your house and you're like, oh my gosh, like I need to get rid of stuff. And that's you energetically cleansing your space. When you clean, when you put things in a certain like way in your house, you're all being like your own little witchy selves and like setting things up energetically so that like your space feels better. So definitely that. And then you can also, like, if you do have any sort of religious background, you can, before you connect, like that you're going to be like, okay, I'm going to sit for 10 minutes and I'm going to ask God these questions, or I want to, maybe I'm trying to connect to my higher self or whatever it may be. Definitely call in like your divine team. You know, like maybe you like to work with Jesus and Mary. You can call like Jesus and Mary to be with you. Maybe you want your abuelo or your great aunt who passed away that you really love, and be like, you know, please be with me, please protect me. And you can almost like kind of see like a circle of them around you being like fully protected. So whatever, I like to set it once and like kind of know that this space is protected, and maybe like once a week I'll be like, okay, it's time to cleanse it energetically. But also when I go in, the greatest protection is like that divine team, but also the heart. So that prayer of like, may I only connect to what is in my highest and greatest good. Thank you for this ability. Like, I'm in heart energy. So if I'm in heart energy, then there will not be like anything dark. When you're connecting and you feel like you're connecting something, don't feel bad. Like, don't feel embarrassed, but you can ask for ID. You can be like, oh, I don't know what I'm connecting to. Like, show me a sign of what you are. I have one student in Soul Academy that said that she used to hug spirit guides to make sure, like, if they hugged her back, then they were like good things. And if they didn't hug her back, then they were bad beings. So you can also, like, when you feel like you're connecting to a being, ask a lot of questions. Are you here in my highest and greatest good? Are you here in the light? Do you work for the light? And as they answer like questions about the light, then you can be like, okay, now we can proceed and I can get more information from you.
I absolutely love that. That's so interesting. And I have Quadira who says, Gigi, is your mango tree and the birds, etc., your protection circle? And that's a good question, Quadira. I'm going to have to think about that because I have a mango tree in the back, and I have butterflies that I grow butterflies in my backyard like a crazy old lady. And that's a good question. I'm going to have to think about that.
You can give them a job. Even with crystals, you give them a job. You're like, okay, Crystal, I'm going to place you here, and I want you to represent money, or I want, like, give these, like, I gave the trees a job, you know, so like give them a job. Like, this is how we're going to work together.
I dig it. I dig it. I'm about to employ everybody in my backyard. I have caterpillars back there. I'm going to make everybody do shit. Like, everybody get to work. Tell me about Soul Academy. Tell me about how those that want to, because there's a lot of curious minds. There's a lot of curious minds that are like, I like to listen to the podcast episodes, and maybe I'll read a book now and then. And then there's the people that are like, no. I am dead serious about this. I want everything. I'm like, I'm in it 100%. Yeah. How do they find you? How do they connect with you? And I know that you have a long wait list for readings because I'm actually signed up to that wait list. How do we know when that wait list is open? Because there's two sides. There's the people who want to learn it and do it themselves. And then there's the people that are like, I want you to do it for me.
Yeah, we definitely have that in, like, we've been building that out in the business lately, because that crazy like wait list is a new thing for me. I've always had a little one, but now we're like at over 500. So we've had to change the business to like help with that. And we're still in the middle of that. But we definitely have two tracks. We have like a person that wants to learn to do it for themselves and wants to do it a little in a more like metaphysical way. And we have, that's Soul Academy. And in Soul Academy, we have two programs. One's for like the layman that, like, you know, is probably like just doing this because they want to be a more spiritual parent, or they want to be a more spiritual entrepreneur, and they want to like have access to their intuition. We do that through Soul Expansion in Soul Academy. And then we have Soul Teacher, which is like that certification. Like, I want to do readings. You get certified in the readings that I do. Like, I want to do readings like Nikki. You know, I'm the big metaphysical nerd. Like, I want to know all the things. And that is like Soul Teacher, which I would totally take. Like, I feel like I have made that out of like my love for, I'm like such a metaphysical nerd. And we go deep, you know, like Akashic records, ancestors, past lives. Like, so there's that track for some people who are like us, like just geeky about it, you know, so that's great. And then there's like the Nikki Novo brand, which is more like where you get a reading. And then like these other options that don't require you to be like super metaphysical. Because as much as like, I think, as I know that I can train anybody to be intuitive because I've been doing it for years and I've proven it over and over again. So I do know that it's amazing to see somebody like feel like they have no gifts and like end the programs and like be able to do, they're so funny. They're like, the students are always like, can you believe it? Like, you know, and it's like, well, I've been doing it for a long enough time. So I do believe that you came up with that information. And actually, when I get readings, I only get readings from the girls that went through my program because they're so damn good. And they're also just so well trained. I wanted to make like, I think from that wound of like my mom being like, I cannot believe you're a psychic. Like, that's so unprofessional. Like, you went to college, you're a smart kid. Like, how could you be doing that? I take a lot of passion in like training really good intuitives because I think there's a need to like professionalize that industry. It's a very old like female work that we've been doing, you know, for many generations, but it's always looked down upon. So Soul Teacher was also born out of like, we're going to make sure we pump out like really good intuitives that can do like really deep work in the world. So that's that. And then in Nikki Novo, yeah, like I do the readings. We're kind of setting up a system now where like it's more fair. To me, it doesn't feel fair. It's like we send out an email and then like whoever gets the email can sign up, you know? So we're doing something, we're working on something a little different that will be launched next month. And then in Nikki Novo brand, we have like fun things like how to find your purpose, how to manifest, all that, me teaching them, but in ways that you like are very like entry level, you know, that you don't have to see the Akashic records or anything like that. So those are like the really fun stuff. And all of it is on, you know, you can go to Instagram. I'm most active there under Nikki Novo. And I do a lot of like group readings, which are really fun. I put group readings on YouTube too. Like, I answer questions. And we're rebranding my podcast right now to be Ask Nikki. So like to be answering intuitive questions and giving downloads, which are super fun because it's so fascinating when I do these readings that are group readings, like how everybody who's there gets answered in a weird way. Like you're attracted to a certain piece of content because like it's meant for you. That's why I say I don't like stress too much in my work, because I know whoever's like meant to receive the content or whoever's meant to be in soul teacher, like they show up. Like I'm not scared about them not coming or not, because that's really how like the law of the universe works. So I find that super fun that we do these like fun YouTube, like people ask questions like, am I meant to leave my partner? And I'll answer it. It's for one person, but you get all these comments and be like, oh my God, Nikki, you were speaking right to me. And I'm like, isn't that fascinating? Like you were meant to find that. And like that information was for you plus 20 other people, you know? So, yeah. So I kind of like, yeah, I don't stress over it. So we have the 2 tracks, and once you go to you'll see the 2 tracks in my website or on Instagram.
I love that. I love it. I love it. Now, we had talked about when we were planning this interview, when we were planning this workshop, we talked about getting into the story of Nikki and everything that we've talked about, and then we also talked about you guiding us through a short, powerful experience. So, if you still feel up to that, we can do that now. If there are any questions, this is the last call for questions and commentary. You can drop it in the comments if you're watching live on Facebook, Instagram, or YouTube, and we will be able to answer some of those questions at the end. But Nikki, take it away with your experience for us today.
Okay, awesome. So sorry guys, I think it was the bug in my eye. I want to give you like a little tool that you can take home that you can use whenever you're like feeling like you need help. You can definitely use cards. I think that's why people like oracle cards or tarot cards, but I do like to like get off. I love cards. I have like them all over my office, but I do like to get off of them just because what if you're traveling and you don't have a deck of cards? Like, how are you going to be able to, you know, get your information? So I like to use like little tools that are within you that you can, you know, that are always with you. So wherever you go, you can use them. So I'm going to give you one little game. So, but I do need your help, Gigi. So Gigi, do you have a question that you don't mind sharing like with the community that is kind of like a question that's like, I can either do this or I can do this. So something like, for example, let's say somebody was asking the question of, should I leave my husband or not leave my husband? So I kind of just like need something that's like a this or a that, or like, should I take this business idea or should I do this business idea? So something that has like, you're kind of deciding between 2.
I like that. And yes, I actually
more than 2, but like for sake of time, maybe 2.
Yeah. So I definitely am not going to leave my husband. I just married him. So we'll leave that one.
Congratulations.
We'll ask that one in a couple of years. So funny. Okay. So yes or no question. We'll do it with seizing happy because it's in a transformational state right now. Okay. Should I focus seizing happy to work exclusively with coaches, or should I focus it to still focus on women entrepreneurs in general?
Okay, so just coaches or general entrepreneurs? Okay, So everybody, so like Gigi's our client, right? Like she's our, and intuition is fun to practice on other people because getting that validation is very helpful. Because another thing is like you're practicing intuition on your own, and you're like, oh, am I making this up? Is this real? Is this not real? So that's why I like to teach in group, because like we're all going to work on Gigi. And we're all going to kind of compare our notes, and that's really, and then, when you see somebody be like, oh my gosh, I got the same thing. Actually, I was teaching in Miami at Sahara's event and we were talking about like cities or something. And like 5 people we were doing a similar experiment and like 5 people in the group got like the same city. And she didn't even say that name. Like I forgot, let's say it was Austin. They were like, people were like, oh my gosh, I got Austin too. Like it was so strange, but it also made them feel like very validated. And the girl was like, yes, Austin was like one of my options or something like that. Wow. So that's why practicing in group it makes it go much faster. You can definitely practice on your own, which is kind of what I used to do. But it's when you start working with other people that really gets you confident in your own intuition. So we're going to work on Gigi. So Gigi is saying like, Option A is go all in on coaches. And then option B is kind of do a general, like just female entrepreneurs. Okay. So what we're going to do is we're going to do like a little visualization, which is similar to like picking a card. Like in this case, what I could do is I could get a deck of cards and I can be like, okay, this is the card for number 1 and this is the card for option 2, and I can read into the cards. But again, we don't have cards always with us. So let's do a little exercise. So we're going to close our eyes. Gigi, you can do this too with you, even though it's your question. You do want to kind of, sorry, we open our eyes. We do, like, especially that when Gigi's pulling for herself, she's going to get in her own way, right? Because she already has like judgments and she's heard people, whatever. So especially when you're reading for yourself, you want to be like, really go into your heart. Like, thank you so much, Source, for this opportunity. Thank you for the ability to connect. Thank you for all your support. Please allow me to really get out of my own way. So Gigi's like, please, like, no judgments. Let me like get out of the way here. And if I'm reading for somebody, so I'm reading for Gigi in this case, please allow me to be a pure vessel for Gigi with no judgments. May I release any parts of my human self that may have fears or judgments, release that, and really just be a clear vessel for Gigi. So I almost feel like my crown, my energy from the top is like connecting, like I'm in a little portal of connection. And this is like when it all begins, okay? So we want to set that intention. So now I'm going to close my eyes. We're going to close our eyes and we're going to imagine, I want you to visualize a street. So just an empty road, and you're on that empty road. There's nobody around you. I always think about the road, if you're from Miami, at this park. Why am I forgetting the park now? Anyways, at a park, and like that's kind of, so it's okay to visualize something you've seen. People get freaked out about like, oh, but this is just the street in my house. It's okay. Just give yourself a visualization of a street. I see the Matheson Hammock Park street. That's like where I go. Okay. So I'm going to see myself. So you're going to see like this little, like, it's like we're in virtual reality basically. And I see like Nikki standing in that road. And to the left, there's one other road. And to the right, there's another road. So to the left road, I'm like, oh, this is Gigi's road where she does just the coaches. So I'm going to see myself. I can do a few things. I can walk into the road, or I can like kind of almost imagine myself flying over the road, or I can just kind of observe the road. But as I go to the left, like, what does it feel like, right? Is it bright? Is it tight? Do you see Gigi there? Is she happy? Is she not? What's going on, right? So you get all that information and you just take a minute to write it all down. So I always use this little paper here, and I'm just going to write without questioning myself, like what I'm getting from road 1. Okay, I'm going to write that down. So Gigi, if you want to write down what you're getting, what you're seeing, if you're seeing colors, if you don't see anything, right? Because that's very common. We all get our intuition differently. Some of us are not visual, but we're going to be feelers. So when I talk about, road 1, or even when Gigi was like, she said it the first time, maybe you had a pain in your heart or a feeling in your stomach, like go deeper into that feeling, right? So like what I'm feeling also matters. Okay. And you're going to write it all down. Okay. And now we're going to go back to our road and we're going to go to the right. And, a good thing here is that we've already seen the first one. So it's kind of nice to compare, like how does the second one feel, which is the general entrepreneur, client. And how does that feel versus the first one? Does it feel harder? Does it feel easier? Is it bright? Is it tight? Do I feel excited? Do I feel sad? Right? So like whatever's happening to me in this moment matters. Even what's happening in your space. So like if my dog starts barking like a crazy person while I'm trying to meditate on the second road and she's making me feel chaotic, that is a sign that like, oh, this road may be a chaotic one because of like everything that's happening in that moment matters. Okay. So feel into the second road and write down what you're getting, which again is like a general, like serving women who are just general entrepreneurs, not necessarily coaches. All right. Qadira, if you're here and you did the exercise, would you share what you got in 1 or 2? So Gigi, how was your experience and what did you get from 1 and what did you get from 2?
So I got a couple of different things. I got visuals and I got sensations. So when I went to the left, actually, I would rather somebody else say first.
Yeah, I was going to ask you that. Okay. So
Yeah.
Which is a good point, right? Like she's like, I don't want to be influenced. So like, let me see, or she doesn't want me to be influenced, at the end of the day.
I have mine written down. So I wrote it down here. You can see it there, but I won't share until somebody else shares.
So I didn't go super in depth because I was like doing the exercise, but right away, the first one, first of all, felt much brighter to me. Like it looked yellow. It looked light. And I saw yellow and I was like, okay, like solar plexus, which is like self-esteem, self-worth, self-identity. Like it felt very much like I can be very powerful here. And like I like believe in this, right? It just felt like I was working with like almost kind of higher level people that I could move faster. And it felt like there felt like momentum there. Oh, and it's so funny. Your colors are yellow. I didn't realize it. So then when I went to the right, it almost felt like the lights were turned off. It felt very doable, but I felt like a lot of like jumping around, almost like inefficient. And it also felt a little like these people hadn't fully made a commitment or a decision as to what they were going to do. So it was like, I'm like, maybe where the coaches were like already at level 3, like this half to the right, some of them were at 1, some of them were at 2. So there was almost like levels within this, which was causing some inefficiency. There was a lot of love for those people and like a lot of like wanting to support and like almost like a sadness of not being able to. And there's also this judgment that like, I'm going to be a coach that coaches coaches and like, am I just doing that because like it's a business? But it also made me feel like I have to go this niche to go more open because there is going to be like a more openness that comes ultimately, Gigi, but it's not going to come without going through this portal, which really kind of reminds me of my work in many ways. Like, I went really deep into the metaphysical and it gave me this opportunity to go much wider, which is why the Nikki Novo brand is like much wider. So it felt like in a way, like this is like, it's not only like the good decision, but it's also what's going to bring you to the ultimate goal, which is after this. So, but this is the portal to that. So that there was like, after that, it felt more like kind of mass appreciation of your work. So this is just kind of the way. So tell me, okay, so let's see what cute. I got freedom in the coach's part and female entrepreneurs had a lot of chaos in my mind, like Native American song. Qadira, I love that you're getting music because a lot of people's intuition will come through music and sounds. And that's like the unique way of you receiving your information. In class, I had this one girl that was like super afraid to like share what she was getting because she was like, you guys, I'm so embarrassed, but I'm getting a song. And we're like, oh, well, now you have to tell us what song you're getting. And she's like, Jesse's Girl. Like it just kept playing over and over. And the question that was being asked was about like somebody's sister, and the sister's name was Jessie. So so she was like getting that song. She thought it was ridiculous, but it was really that it was the word Jessie that she needed. So I love that like you're digging into like whatever is your unique way. Some people just want to be visual, and not all of us are getting visual information. Native American song is not chaotic, but what I'm saying is there was more distraction on the side. The coach's side had a clarity for me. Beautiful. So, we had different messages, me and Q, but similar kind of like overall feelings, right? So Gigi, what did you get?
So I got, when I walked to the left side, which is the side that is exclusive for working only with coaches, I got a visual of me laughing with women, which is symbolic of like the fun part of what I'm doing, which is really important to me. And then I also saw flowers, and I saw yellow flowers as well. So I almost saw like a blooming there.
Yeah, that's beautiful. So that's like validation, right? Like we both saw yellow, and remember that like that message is for you. So the way you interpret a yellow flower is your way. And because I work so much with the energy centers, I'm going to go straight into the energy centers because that's my language. So part of developing our intuition is actually developing our own language. Q is like music. Like there's something about music that means something to me. That's part of her language. Maybe I never hear or sense music, but I see a lot of colors, and I've decided that these colors mean this. So that's important for you to know, that like you develop your own language. When Gigi sees yellow, maybe yellow means death to her, but it means life to me. And that's okay, because it's my intuition language and it's her intuition language.
I love that. And so I also had a sensation, which was tingly, and I felt the tingliness like down over my chest, like over my breasts, which felt it felt feminine. It felt,
beautiful.
Yeah. And which is interesting because one of my most recent meditations that I did, what I requested was to be more deeply connected with my feminine energy, because I work a lot in the masculine, and I feel like in this decision-making space where I'm at, I want to do it intuitively. I don't want to do it structured, which is funny.
How many coaches need that, right? Like how many coaches, we just like go into coaching to be more masculine, and it's like coaching from a feminine place.
Absolutely. Which is interesting because when I walked toward the right part of the road, which is working openly with female entrepreneurs, the sensation that I felt immediately was like a weight on my shoulders, like on my traps, I felt weight. And the word that came to my mind was structure.
Which is what you probably need, maybe, but that's also not where you want to come from. Like they may need structure, but like you're in a place that you want to be more in the feminine.
Right. And so what I've learned also recently, in the past 4 to 5 years, I say recently, like in the grand scheme of things, is I don't flow when I'm put to structure. So like when I've taken a lot of mentors, and I've done masterminds, and I've done, to grow my business and grow my empire and all that, I believe that we have to continue learning. And what I've found is that when I lean into structured formats, like you have to do this email sequence, and then you have to do this marketing thing, and then this other thing, like my brain just is, and I can do it, but when I'm in the structure, things don't flow for me. When I'm in the space of like, you know what I'm going to do? I'm just going to put this thing together. It just, and it blooms. So like in my mind, that blooming flower is like it blooms for me.
Yeah.
And I don't have an email sequence plan, and I don't have a landing page that's beautifully designed. I literally have like a post, an idea, a person, and a place, and everybody comes. And it's just like, okay, guys, we're going to make this magic happen. So that was very interesting. And I do feel, Padira and I are very closely connected spiritually, and we talk a lot about these things. And so I can totally I understand where she says, like, hearing Native American music. Native American music is very big. It's very, it's in your hair.
A lot of different pieces too. Yeah, there's a bunch of instruments, and there's sounds, and there's actually like different levels of the voices and stuff. So there's a lot going on. And it's like almost, it's not that it's chaotic, it's just that there's a lot of different types of, so, when you're doing a lot of different entrepreneurs, like this one has a flower shop, and this one, owns a baby nursery, and, like a lot of different pieces.
Yeah. And to me, that represents, like, I like to do, I've been in a place for the last couple of years where I want peace, right? Like that's my main goal, is like, I want it to be easy, and I want it to be peaceful, and I want it to be a shit ton of fun. So it's funny that her vision would also come in that way of like sounds, because sounds are very important to me. In fact, on the day of my wedding, I had a playlist that I created, which had a lot of like healing, beautiful, spiritual music. And with my bridesmaids, when we were getting our hair and makeup done, that's all that I was playing. And then the girls were like, so are we going to turn up or what? And I was like, absolutely, guys. Like 1 o'clock, I promise I'm going to play Daddy Yankee and J Balvin, like full throttle. I promise. 1 o'clock came along. The photographer arrived. The videographer arrived. We had to put our clothes on, like, and then the flowers got there all at the same time, the bouquet, all these things. And they had already turned on the other music. And I literally, like, I was trying to answer to all these things, and all I could hear was reggaeton. I couldn't think. It was just a boom, 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 boom. And I look at my maid of honor, and I'm like, put my other playlist back on right now. And she's like, yes, okay, done.
Yeah.
The music changed and my whole thing. So music is also a big doer for me, or thinker.
Yeah,
Like
you're absorbing the energy of it, definitely. And unfortunately, the more we get into this work, sometimes the less tolerance we have for certain things. Like you used to love the trashy, reality show, and it's like, damn, I can't really watch it anymore because I've tapped into my sensitivities so much that I energetically like can't handle all those things anymore, which I think is a great thing, because then we'll dictate to the world like what we want more of. Like, oh, so many of us can't handle this anymore, and we would like this kind of media instead, or whatever. So that's so spiritual bridezilla.
100%. I had like one of my other bridesmaids was like, she had incense, and so like she's very intuitive also. So like she would come close to me and she's like, are you doing okay? And I'm like, yeah, and she's like, you need some incense. And like she just burned incense. And I had one bridesmaid who's her whole thing all day was just, she'd get bottles of water and just like switch out my straw.
That was you like living your like
the empty bottle and put the straw in another one. She's
that
like,
was you like reliving your past life as an Egyptian like goddess, like you were just like coming back for it. You were just there
and
for
it's
it.
so funny you should say that.
Like, I know this role very well. I've done this. Where's my cat? I have done this many times.
Exactly. I was just there like, give me water and burn incense. And they're such queens. Like they were 100% just there for like, Gigi wants the music that's like, yo soy bruja del mar. And they're like, yes, play the music. She needs into water, whatever everybody needs to be quiet for 10 minutes because she has to meditate, whatever she wants. Yeah. It was magical. They were amazing. I tell them all the time. I'm like, you guys were the best.
One of my favorite offerings is I do bridal and baby blessings. And for clients, like people that have been like my clients or whatever, but it's like one of my favorite things to set the bride, because those are such initiations in a woman's life, like giving birth is one of my favorite things. And going into marriage. So I come in and do those like blessings, which are beautiful. The bridesmaids are always like, whatever she wants, but yeah.
I love that. Okay, so we are coming to the close of our beautiful time together. I want to thank you once again, Nikki, for not just giving us so many tools, so to do the writing, to spend time in nature, to find the quiet, but also to go through this exercise together and to show the beautiful way in which we are all connected. Because I find that there is no deeper proof than the fact that we are all just one main source of energy divided into whatever 6.5 billion people there are on the planet. And for us to share in one question that I have, and for everyone who participated and shared to get the same message in their own language, right? Like that is a sign, because how else could you connect to me and to my question and my concern, and like this one little drop of water in the world of my life, and everybody kind of like, okay, that's what she wants to know, and we can connect to each other in such a beautiful, powerful way. I think that is fascinating. So thank you for sharing these tools with us. Thank you for spending all of this time with us today. And I have shared, and if you're watching in the replay, we've shared in the show notes how you can get a hold of Nikki. It's Nikki Novo on all social media platforms. Instagram is her favorite jam. But also tell me about on your website at nikkinovo.com. I know that you have some really special things happening there right now. When is your next enrollment for your courses?
Yeah, Gigi, I'll give it to you for show notes, but I have a free gift for everybody. It's called the Find Your Inner Power meditation, which actually it's like about the solar plexus, which I feel like that's what we saw yellow, and I didn't plan for that. So I think it's like a perfect thing for those of you who are coming to Gigi, because like you're really trying to access that power, which is exciting. So it's a meditation that you can just listen to. It's a healing really, and just receive it. So I will give you the link, Gigi, because it's kind of a long link, you guys. So can I drop it? I don't think I can drop it in the comments, right? You can just put it in.
You can. If you put it in the comments, it'll go under each one of the platforms, or we can add it to the show notes, or we can do both. Drop it in the comments so that everyone who's watching live right now can connect to it directly, immediately, if they feel called to. And then we'll also include it in the show notes. So if you're watching in the replay, you can just take a look at the show notes. If you're listening to the podcast, you can take a look at the show notes, and we will
put it there.
And you can click on there. So
I wanted to give you guys that gift, and then we can stay in touch, because you have to give your email, and then I can, keep you up to date with everything. I'm currently teaching Discovering Your Soul's Purpose. Well, actually, it's really a remembering. So I'm excited to teach that this month in June. And then our Soul Academy, I'm currently with like Soul Expansion, which is like my layman metaphysical program. And then Soul Teacher, which is a certification for like coaches or, you know, anybody that maybe wants to do like one-on-one work, is opening in July of the last time we'll be doing it this year is July 2022. So yeah.
I love it. All right. We're going to go
you.
ahead and end this live broadcast and this episode of Chats with Gigi. Thank you so much for tuning in. We hope that you will continue the conversation. You already know how you can connect directly with Nikki. And if you use the hashtag Chats with Gigi on social media platforms, we'll continue the convo on there as well. I'm Gigi Diaz. Always a pleasure to chit chat with you. And thank you for tuning in.